I've grown up in church, so I've pretty much heard all of the stories, especially the one that we're going to be talking about today. But before we dive in, I just want to say welcome to the very first video episode of the Me and Jesus podcast. This is happening because a lot of you guys are requesting it, so I hope that this is helpful for you, and I hope that you guys enjoy it, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think. The story that we're going to be talking about today, I knew by heart, or at least I thought I did, and that is Jesus feeding the 5,000, which, fun fact, was not actually 5,000, it was 5,000 men, which means that most of those men probably had wives, and most of those wives and husbands had children. So it is at minimum around 12,000 people and could be all the way up to around 20,000 people. So feeding 5,000, that was impressive enough, but 20,000, that's when things get insane. So we're going to be diving into today is John chapter 6 verses 1 through 15. Here's the KPV, Karleigh's paraphrased version. Jesus looked at Philip and was like, hey dude, can we feed all these people? Philip's response was, there ain't enough money to feed them all, dude. Then Simon Peter noticed a little boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. He told them, well, we have a bit of food here, but there's no way it's going to be enough. And then he puts the hands in Jesus' hands, and then all were fed. But before everybody was fed, there's a lot of stuff that happens, and I want to dive into that today. So many things stand out to me from this passage, particularly Philip versus Peter. Philip didn't even have a smidgen of belief. He looked at the situation and said, nah, dude, we cannot afford it. Peter looked at the situation and said, I don't think this is going to work, but maybe Jesus can do something. Peter had a smidgen of faith. Not a lot, but Peter had a mustard seed of faith. That's it. Nothing fancy, nothing massive, just a mustard seed of faith, whereas Philip had none. Nothing to a mustard seed doesn't feel like much, but it's only because of Peter's faith in seeing that little boy with the fish that he was able to put it in Jesus' hands. Honestly, think about that little boy for a second. That little boy brought lunch for himself and maybe for his family. He was planning on sitting there to listen to Jesus, and then all of a sudden, he brings his food, and then Peter asks for the food. Peter takes the food and then gives it to Jesus. The little boy is like, well, what about me? This ain't gonna feed all these people. I was prepared. I brought these things. What about me? And now you're taking it from me. Now, if that's not a whole word in and of itself, I don't know what to tell you. Because as I'm recording this right now, that just hit me. But maybe I'll do an entire podcast episode on just that concept later on. But let's talk about Philip for a second, because as much as I can talk down about Philip, I realize that I'm Philip more often than not. For a little bit of context, before they reached the 5,000 to feed them, all of the disciples had already been sent out to go and do their good work. Now, by the time they had come back, they had put their all into their work. They had worked so hard that they had actually forgotten to eat. So they were tired, they were hungry, and they told Jesus they were tired. Jesus was like, hey, y'all didn't even eat. Come with me. Let's go get rest. And instead of getting rest, they go to a 5,000. Now, I have never worked with that many people. I have never worked with 10, 20,000 people, but I have worked with several hundred. I have worked at events where I've passed through several hundred people, and I was exhausted, and I was well fed, and I had slept well the night before. I can't even imagine what these disciples were going through. If it were me and I just see all of these people out here and I'm like, hold on, wait a minute, Jesus, you sent us out to do that and now you want me to do this? I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I'm just saying, we can't really down Philip too much, especially when he is us. But Philip aside, then there's Peter. Peter has that little bit of a mustard seed of faith that actually ended up changing the entire story. He took that smidgen and said, this isn't going to be enough. But maybe if I put it in the hands of Jesus, he's going to be able to do something with it. But here's the cool part that I didn't even realize until my pastor brought it up in a sermon, and it absolutely blew my mind. Jesus didn't actually hand out the food. The expansion of the 5,000 did not actually happen in Jesus' hands. It happened in the hands of the disciples. What they did is they gave Jesus the food. Jesus broke it and blessed it, and then gave the food to the disciples, and the disciples went and handed it out. The disciples went and did the work required to reach all of these people. So it was actually through what the disciples did in obedience to Jesus that actually created the miracle. Let's go into Matthew 14:19 to see if what I'm saying is correct. Then he ordered the crowds to sit down in the grass, and taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. That's the ESV translation. Jesus broke the bread and blessed it, but he didn't walk around and give it to all the people. He gave it to the disciples, and the disciples were to hand it out to all the people. The overtired, the overexerted, the hungry, feeding 20,000 people. Can you imagine if you and 11 of your friends were handing out bread and fish to 15,000 people, 5,000 people, 20,000 people? Can you imagine how long that would have taken? Can you imagine if you were already tired and hungry? If you were already obedient? If you were already in it and then you're called to go and do this thing? Talk about not getting weary doing good. The thing that gets me the most in this whole situation is that the people ate and were satisfied. They were like Thanksgiving satisfied. Like they were unbutton the top button of your pants and just kind of sit there and rub your food baby satisfied. They wwere reclined. Jesus told them to recline on the grass and be fed. They had more than enough. And in fact, there was so much more than enough that there was enough for all the disciples to each get a basket of their own. So the 5 loaves and 2 fish not only satisfied all of those people, but there was more than enough for the disciples left over. If this is not blowing your mind, I don't know what will. Remember, that miracle happened when Jesus put it into their hands to go and be obedient and to go and hand it out. So that business you want to start, that small group you want to begin, that nonprofit you want to volunteer at, that ministry you want to join, that bill you gotta pay, that little bit of food in the fridge that need to last until the next paycheck. Imagine what would happen if you put it into the hands of Jesus. What would happen if you gave it to him so he could bless it and break it and give it right back? As I am recording this, the Lord is continuing to show me how this is happening in my own life. I'm currently in a season that doesn't make sense. I ain't gonna lie, it's not good, and I am struggling to hold it together. I know that he has a plan though, and I know that he is good, and I know that he's going to work it all for my good. The breaking isn't fun. The blessing is great. The breaking sucks. It's awful and nerve-wracking, and it's enough to make me want to just throw in the towel and quit. And trust me, I have gotten pretty dang close several times. Not just with this podcast, not just with this business, but my other business. I wanted to get in a car and just run away and say, screw it, I don't care anymore, I'm out. But I also know that he blessed it, and he broke it, and he put it back in my hands. And now it's my responsibility to go and do what I was called to do with it. It is my responsibility to go out and disperse it among the 12, 13, 14, 20,000 people. He showed me that he approved of it. He showed me that this is what it is that he wants me to do. And in showing me that, he is sending me out. Even though I'm tired, and even though I'm hungry, and even though I'm drained, and even though I do not want to, and even though I whine, and even though I complain, I am going to do it. If I quit now, I'm going to lose the miracle. If the disciples would have quit, not only would they have not witnessed 5 loaves and 2 fish feeding 20,000 people, not only would they have seen that happen among all of those, not only would he have experienced that, but also they would have missed out on the blessing of having full baskets for themselves too. As I am recording this, as I am reading the outline, I am realizing that Jesus says that I'm in this phase right now. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I don't wanna. I'm over it. I wanna quit. I wanna bow out. And when I tell you, when I am tired and I am hungry and that hangry vibe comes on, I am not fun to be around. And I am in a phase where it feels like I'm giving and giving and giving and giving, and nothing is going to ever come back to me. But just like the disciples, they had to push through to finish the miracle, to see the miracle, to experience the miracle, and then be able to take home their basket. I know that my basket is coming. Right now, I am out and I am in obedience, and this is not a pat on my back. This is to show what's possible when you lean on the Lord. When you allow God to work in you, and you take your 5 loaves and 2 fish, when you take your circumstance and you say, Jesus, I don't know what to do with this. I can't handle this anymore. I'm out. I want to quit. This is beyond anything that I could possibly ever deal with in my life. I need you to take it. And when you give it to him, and you trust him to bless it, and you trust him to break it, and you trust him to give it back to you, and you trust him and be obedient, he's going to move in your life. He has never let us down. We may not understand, but he has never let us down. Not once. When I first started this podcast, this blog, I did so reluctantly. I didn't wanna. I ran from this for years. I'm talking since I was like 13. I didn't want to. I had zero desire to. This is not the way that I wanted to spend my time. This is not the way that I wanted to speak. This is not the way that I wanted to experience my life. I didn't want to, but I did it anyway. And ever since I have stepped into alignment and obedience, it's not easy. And it has been probably the hardest year in a long time. But also, the fact that this is the hardest I've experienced is a blessing in and of itself. God is doing incredible things in my life because I am leaning into and doing what it is that he has called me to do. He didn't say it'd be easy, but he did say it'd be worth it. And even when I am reluctant and frustrated and tired and I whine and I cry and I throw a fit and I say I don't want to and I ask for answers that I've already been given, he shows up for me. Every single time. He never gets tired of the complaining. He never gets over my crap. He never gives up on me, and he's not going to give up on you either. That is the God that we serve. That is the Jesus that died for you and for me. That is the Jesus that cares for us so deeply that he's never going to leave us hanging. I hope that this blessed you as much as it blessed me. I hope that it brought you some peace. I hope that it encouraged you, and I hope that God's going to speak to you in your life and tell you what your multitude is, what your basket is, what your 5 loaves and 2 fish are. And if he's already revealed it to you, which I have a feeling he has, all you have to do is release it. And I know it's easier said than done, but I promise you any plans that he has are far better than any we could possibly come up with. Don't miss out on what he has for you. Whine, cry, throw a fit, I don't care, but don't miss it. What is the thing that you're holding on too tight to release? Put it in his hands. Dear Lord, I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak to whoever is watching this, Lord, but also for the revelations that you brought me while I was recording and writing this. I pray that you work in the hearts of those who want to give that thing to you, but are reluctant. I pray that you help them to release that to you because while they are tired, you're not. Remind them who you are, Lord. Show them that you're the same Jesus who fed the multitudes and you can do it again in their life. Thank you, Lord, for all that you are, and thank you for never giving up on us. Praise Jesus. Amen. Thank you guys for listening to another episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, I would love for you to comment below and let me know anything that came up for you. I would also love for you to share it with a friend. Make sure to subscribe if you're listening to the audio version. Make sure you check out the show notes for any interesting info that you will find there. You can also find a blog post version of this on the Me and Jesus podcast website, which I will link below in the show notes or description as well. I really appreciate you guys listening. If you found this beneficial, please leave a review and or share it with a friend. That's how these grow and reach the people that they are meant to reach. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, y'all.